Welcome to Shar's Stories, stories to renew your mind. The phrase, that's all she wrote, brings back memories of my relatives down south. I'm originally from Detroit, but my mom, grandmother, grandfather, all from the south. On my mother's side from Alabama, from my dad's side from South Carolina. And that's all she wrote. When you look it up and Google it, it says it means an articulation of a sudden and unforeseen end to one's hopes or plans. And it's something like, and it's using all different kinds of contexts. You could go into the kitchen and thinking you're going to get the last piece of pie, and you go in and open up the container and it's gone. And that could be, well, that's all she wrote. We won't have any of that. My grandmother and my mom's mama used that phrase a lot. In 1890, she was born in 1894 and she lived till 1979. If you ever heard that phrase, that's all she wrote. Leave it in the comment that you've heard that. I rarely hear it spoken now. And thinking of grandma led me to thinking about how my extended family would gather and relatives would come north from down south. We would prepare a lot of food, and everybody up north would gather at my grandmama's house and to listen to the stories from down south. And the people from down south wanted to hear about what was happening up north. And a lot of times, it was almost like camp out because we make pallets on the floor and people would sleep. It would be so many people that were staying there. And it was an important event because in the 1950s, not everyone had phones. And if you did, you were very reluctant to incur uh, the long distance charges. So you didn't want those to happen. And as a matter of fact, when someone would go out of town. Let's say my mom went out of town to New York, and she would call back collect to the house, and we were staying with my grandmother, and whoever would answer phone would know not to accept the charges. We wouldn't accept the charges, but we knew that she had arrived at her destination. Well, those thoughts led me to think about Uncle John, who lived to be 108. He was my grandfather's uncle. That's my mom's father's uncle. And Uncle John lived from 1888. No, my grandfather lived from 1888 to 1892. Uncle John was born in Alabama, like the rest of my family, but he lived a lot of his life in Lima, Ohio. My mother used to spend vacation time with Uncle John and Aunt Julia. They didn't have any children, but she would go over there when she lived in Detroit. And they loved to have her come because they doted on her because they didn't have any children. And when I was born in 1948, Aunt Julia died just 3 months later. And my mom, always said it was a sad because she didn't get a chance to see her first child. When Uncle John was 99, he asked to come and live with my mother in Indianapolis. That's where she was living in. And he was in good health and he got around really good. Well, Uncle John was more than a notion to live with. He and my mom had worked out a room and board arrangement. He paid $25 a week. And for the $25 a week, he got a room all by himself, all of his meals done, all of his washing and ironing. But Uncle John insisted on getting receipts for that $25. I don't understand it, but he wanted his receipts. Uncle John also had a deep mistrust of banks. He had my mother help him open a savings account at the bank. He thought that that's what he wanted, and he had $2,000. And back in that was the '60s. That was a lot of money then. It's a lot of money now if you have it. And a few days later, he took it out the bank. And Mama didn't like the idea of that cash just being in the house, so Mama convinced him to put the money in a safe deposit box. But Uncle John wanted to go to the bank every day to make sure his money was still there. This was driving my mom to frustration. They ended up putting his money where? Under the mattress. All right. Eventually, Uncle John decided to move back to the South, back to Alabama, and stay on family property. He decided to take the train home. And my mom sent a telegram from the Indianapolis train depot to his great nephew Charlie there in Utah, Alabama, and that's the closest little town to where our family property is in a place called Dollarhide. And heard that the name dollar hide came from they used to sell hides for $1. Okay, that's what I heard. Anyway, my mom sent a telegram to Uncle Charlie, and the telegram said, "Meet John at the train station on Monday at 2 p.m. Stop. He is coming home. Stop." Okay, now, Uncle Charlie just happened to be the local undertaker. Well, as old as Uncle John was, what was Uncle Charlie to think? Charlie went to the train station with his hearse to pick up the casket. Charlie was in total shock when Uncle John walked off the train. When Uncle John was about 102, my mom and dad visited him and asked if they could grocery shop for him. They were, down in Alabama. And Uncle John rattled off a few grocery items and then said, "And bring me one bottle of Mogan David grape wine." My mom was a little bit nervous about buying wine for an elderly man over 100. And she replied, "Are you sure you ought to be drinking wine?" Uncle John looked her straight now. He said, "Listen, child, I didn't get to be 102 and not know how to drink wine. I ain't getting ready to drink the whole bottle at one time." That was wise for Uncle John, and that was witty. They bought the wine. That reminds me of Philippians 4:5. "Let your moderation be known unto all men. The Lord is at hand." Thank you. Remember to like and share. Shalom.